Hello and welcome back to Continental Club, where we discuss the hottest topics in European football. Joining me today, we've got Joe Tomlinson and Chris Hamill. And our first question comes from X_Kevier. And he or she asks, how do Atletico Madrid rebuild this summer with Hernandez a done deal, Godin a done deal, and Griezmann wanting to leave? But before we get into that, if you're new to this channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button and that notification bell to never miss a video. But we'll go to Joe first. Hernandez, done deal to Bayern. Do you think this is a good move?
Ooh, I think Bayern have overpaid slightly, 80 million euros. Obviously being forced to pay his buyout clause though, which is the reason they've paid so much money for him. It's not like Luka Hernandez is one of the best young centre-backs in the world right now. I think if he was starting every single game and you were looking at him as being Atletico's #1 centre-back pick, I'd be saying, okay, look, this is money well spent. But it is a little bit of a risk for me. I think he's only made 20 appearances this season. He's probably third in the pecking order in terms of Atleti centre-halves behind Jimenez and Godin. The reason that I think it is a good transfer is that he also offers cover in that left-back slot, which is something that Bayern have been after for a little while. Obviously, a lot of pressure on David Alaba to play nearly every minute of every game. And with Bernat leaving as well, who offer cover on both sides, I think that this is probably a smart move in the long term, and we'll look at it in sort of 4 years and go, not bad business from Bayern Munich. But it is a risk nonetheless. I think Atleti, though, will be really gutted to lose him. Obviously, the buyout clause, there's nothing they can do about it because part of La Liga contract stipulations mean you have to have a buyout clause in your contract as a player. But equally, there's been a lot of talk about Atleti players leaving, and this is a player they can't stop leaving, but I just don't think it's good business for Atletico Madrid, and to replace him is going to be a nightmare because they're going to have to spend that 80 million euros to get a player in of his quality probably, which they won't have wanted to have to do.
Well, this is happening at the same time as apparently Diego Godin heading off to Inter Milan. And just to go back to your argument, I do think there's shades of the Aymeric Laporte deal to City here, isn't there? In that it looks like an astronomical fee for a centre-back. 10 years ago, 80, 90 million pounds got you the leading striker in the top 5 divisions, and now it gets you a very good centre-half. I mean, Luka Hernandez's pedigree is unquestionable. But I was surprised when we delved into his stats to see that the most starts he's made in a league season is 24. So, like you said, there's been an element of rotation.
But you know, he's not 19 either. If he was 19 and that was the case, or 20, I'd be thinking, right, okay. But he's now 24.
But he has been behind sort of an era-defining centre-back partnership or setup at the very least, system, let's say. And he'll probably have to bed his way into the side in a similar fashion to Aymeric Laporte, in that he's not going to displace Hummels and Boateng straight away, is he? But as soon as Boateng has an injury woe, I imagine he'll cement his place in that side.
But then I think you look at that.
And Boateng's not played over 20 games himself in a season for a long time, so this needed to happen.
But then what happens to Nicolas Sula? What happens to Benny Pavard, who's just been bought for 30 mil?
Well, Nicolas Sula, I mean, Pavard, in the same way that Hernandez can play in a full-back position, so can Pavard, I guess. And with regard to Nicolas Sula, I mean, Matt Hummels is 30, 31. And Nicolas Sula is a similar age to Hernandez, isn't he? So they might just have to, be patient, let's say, for the next couple of years. Because there is going to be a massive overhaul with this Bayern squad, isn't it? And this is just the tip of the iceberg, in my opinion. But Diego Godin, let's go back to Atletico, because they were the focus of this video. Diego Godin, Tutto Sport, apparently claiming that he signed a pre-contract agreement with Inter Milan worth 6.5 million euros. Not a bad last payday.
Crazy money.
For a sort of battle-born centre-back.
Classic Inter.
I mean, I imagine his career will probably stretch a little bit further in Italy. Especially an Inter side, which, hasn't been as dominant as it should have been in previous years, but they're looking to invest big time as well, aren't they? He's set to replace Miranda, I believe, who is being released in the summer, the Brazilian former teammate, 34, 35 I think so, 34, now. Yeah. He'd be a decent acquisition for, I think maybe someone that just needs centre-back cover. I've always quite liked Miranda, quite composed on the ball. Maybe
a lot of experience there.
Yeah, a lot of experience. Maybe missing some physical attributes now.
Nailed on to go to China or Russia, Miranda. Nailed on.
Perhaps, yeah. I mean, he could probably get some money elsewhere. But His minutes were limited last campaign after the arrival of De Vrij, and they've also got Skriniar, so they've got really outstanding centre-back prospects themselves. So Diego Godin just helps complement them, brings a bit of experience to the side. But again, this is a huge sucker punch for Atleti, who are losing, 2 defensive stalwarts in one go. Beppe Marato, who of course tried to sign him for Juventus, he's now the sporting director of Inter, a massive fan of his, so he's been crucial to this deal in terms of bringing him in, getting that signature across the line, let's say. We don't really need to go over what Diego Godin's, won as a professional.
Yeah.
And he's actually showed no signs of slowing up, easy for you to say, with only Oblak, Griezmann, Saul and Rodrigo having played more minutes this season than the 127 capped Uruguayan. As much as that it is, yeah. He's played 40 games in each of his last 7 full seasons. He's averaging 3.4 tackles and interceptions. His pass accuracy's dropped a little bit this year, but I'm going to say that's owing to system, that's owing to pragmatism rather than his ability on the ball waning. That's the only stat we could find that had noticeably dropped. So he is evergreen, and he's been a crucial part to Simeone's defence, which have only conceded 19 goals this season. I think they're only conceding 10.3 or 4 shots, which is the 3rd best in the league, weirdly enough behind Getafe and Eibar, who, Eibar have been sustaining these numbers all season. It's crazy, there's obviously some defensive talent in there, as well as my boy Jean Jordan, who has been linked with Arsenal.
Yeah, I saw you getting tagged with that on Twitter yesterday.
It's a madness. We called that 3 months ago. But Atleti facing all sorts of issues now, especially with some of their bigger signings of recent seasons not particularly banging.
Yeah, exactly. Diego Costa, has had his issues.
That was one of the worst signings
60 million,
of the decade, mate.
£60 million. And then Thomas Lemar hasn't looked anywhere near to a close to 75 million, I think he was, as well. And then just as these, defensive, one stalwart and one up-and-coming defender are leaving, Griezmann is again apparently unhappy. Apparently he's unhappy with the club's lack of ambition, which I think is ridiculous.
I've had enough of it.
I'm unhappy with his haircut at the moment. He looks like a really annoying Australian bloke.
I've had enough of Griezmann.
Really?
I've absolutely had enough of him. For the last 3 windows, he has consistently come out, flirted with clubs, gone, I've had enough of Atletico. I've had enough of Atletico. I want to go to Man United. It was, remember when he was nearly joining and Paul Pogba was doing the whole, and then the next window was, I'm going to Barcelona. Then he agreed to stay at Atletico Madrid to help Diego Simeone out. Then he was going to Barca. Now he's released a Netflix documentary called The Making of a Legend, self-produced. Brilliant work, Antoine, which has made me like him even more. I've had enough of him moaning.
Yeah, he's incredibly self-centred. I also think the whole La Decision video is totally...
The way he dangled the carrot.
Moody walking around the Wonder Metropolitano in a
embarrassing.
hoodie at night.
Yeah.
Oh, grow up, Antoine. But he would be a massive loss to Atleti. I think he scored over 25 goals for the last 5 years. And also, his complaints of a lack of ambition, I think, are absolutely ridiculous. They've spent their money recently, but they've moved stadiums. They're still competing at the top of La Liga against 2 of the biggest and richest clubs in the world. What did he honestly expect? And I think he slightly missed the boat as well. I think he's now he's just turned 28.
I agree.
So I think Barcelona should look at other alternatives. I think there's better young strikers out there for the long term.
Barcelona are actively looking to offload Coutinho, we're led to believe. Real Madrid are probably going to double down on Eden Hazard. So Manchester United have one of the best front lines in Europe and are already finding it hard to find minutes for Lukaku, to find minutes for Rashford in his preferential position. He's not going to go to City. Where does he fit in?
Definitely not a Juve.
Juve, Dybala's, making appearances off the bench, although he has been used across all competitions. I think he's clocked up,
The other option
I think
is...
it would be the long term. Long term is even not really accurate anymore, but the replacement for Suarez long term. But at 28, I think they could get Luka Jovic. They're also looking at Marcus Rashford as well.
Well, there's also talk, though, of Edinson Cavani being moved on by PSG this summer. And
oh, really?
That might end up aligning with a front line of names.
If he's going to complain about a lack of ambition at Atletico and then move to PSG, that
rubbish,
is...
isn't it?
Yeah, you're throwing stones in glass houses.
But Atleti as a club need to be careful. I covered them on a podcast about owners a few months ago, sorry. And they're
been a long couple of months.
Yeah, it's been a long couple of months. And they're not the wealthiest club. I think they're 20th in the world. I think they're behind clubs like Leicester City as well. They're not really financial juggernauts in the way that they can buy a Champions League. They need to develop young players, and they've done that really effectively. But Simeone's been there 7.5 years now, and I sort of wonder, every manager has a lifespan, and every manager has a period where what they say is most effective to their team. And there doesn't seem like there's been a massive drop-off this year, but Simeone seems like I think he's only got about 18 months left at Atleti, and then he'll try a new challenge.
I think he needs a little bit more help from above in the recruitment department. Some of their recruitment recently...
Vitolo, 35 million.
Gelson Martinez. Gelson Martinez, he's gone now, hasn't he, already, after a 6-month failure of a stint?
But that was a free transfer, and they'll probably generate money
Jackson Martinez,
from that. But they also sell very well, don't they? And they also find a way to turn over... an unbelievable calibre of striker year on year. It didn't work with Diego Costa, but in the past, Aguero, Torres, Falcao, Forlan. So they do have a good history of dealings, important transfer dealings. But
big pressure on Morata at 50 million euros again, though.
I bet. Will Chelsea let him leave permanently? Because they now can't sign a replacement.
When I've watched Atletico Madrid
Morata might go back
this
to Chelsea.
season, they've looked a much better side with him in there. Some actual mobility up front. Diego Costa, his knees look absolutely shot to pieces.
But lads, I think that the interesting thing, I wrote down some possible defensive replacements, but I think the interesting thing is if Griezmann leaves, who would they get in to replace him? And I've been touting for a while that Alexander Lacazette would be a great signing for a top Champions League club. I really, really rate Lacazette. Yeah. I think he's Arsenal's better all-round forward. He's a much better all-round forward than Aubameyang. Aubameyang might be a better finisher.
Yeah.
But I think he's superb. I think he'd be a great signing for Atleti.
I think what people think about Firmino, that's how good Lacazette's been this season, and probably then some. I think his link-up play is underrated. He's almost kind of this, this second striker that still gets a very healthy amount of goals. I think 12 goals, 7 assists this season.
Exactly that, yeah.
19 goal involvements at this stage of the season. Another success story, and he's had to rotate as well, hasn't he? He's not clocked up the most minutes. You've got other options like Sebastian Haller. He's kind of the lesser fancied of the two between Luka Jovic and himself at Eintracht Frankfurt, but he's also a very good creator. Been putting them on a plate for Luka Jovic this season. Striking options, though, few and far between, I'd say, options in terms of proven quality. Can you see anyone that would be,
well, they could sign a number 10 potentially.
Yeah, I agree with your previous point. I don't see Griezmann having a route out of Atleti. I think he's going to get stuck there. I don't know enough about the Morata deal. I believe they've got the option to buy. That's already been
would Chelsea be willing to sell?
But I think because they've had the option to buy... Oh yeah, maybe. But I personally think, from what I've read, they can just pay 50 million euros and he's their player. Which would be an interesting one for Chelsea. Nevertheless, if they are looking, I completely agree with Lacazette. I think Lacazette, Arsenal fans might be thinking, we're never going to let him go. I think if the right offer came in for Lacazette, they'd be tempted. Especially with a severe lack of funds at the club right now. A seemingly complete inability to shift Mesut Ozil, who's earning, £350,000 a week and not playing enough minutes to justify it. And if you can't get rid of Mesut, and you do need money to spend in other areas, maybe Alexandre Lacazette is the sort of player they will be looking to let go.
I think he's better than, he's better suited to Unai Emery's ambitions to rebuild the club than retaining Aubameyang. I think, Aubameyang's turning 30. This year, I want to say, maybe early next year. And whilst his game's not totally reliant on speed, I think you're probably going to see a steeper drop off than having Alexandre Lacazette stick around for another 2 or 3 years. Going back to, if they do keep Morata, I suppose there's less emphasis on getting someone who can get you those 25 goals, because they have been so reliant on Griezmann's goals, haven't they, over the last couple of years? I think, who's chipping in? Like Sol Niguez is often in the top 3 with
he's been contributed to 48% of them.
Like 7-8 goals.
Griezmann,
which kind of leaves you in a predicament if Morata doesn't rediscover his form. But you back him to get at least 15 goals over the course of a full season in La Liga. So it might be interesting, to go and get a second striker or to go and get a number 10. And there's a couple of outstanding ones in Germany, in Julian Brandt and even Torgan Hazard, who's creating over 2 chances a game. He's having over 2 dribbles. I think they're interesting transfers to consider. I'm sure that's what they had in mind when they went and got Gelson Martins from Lisbon.
I think maybe even
But I think
more
they probably
so.
come with a better pedigree.
Like, what this makes the move for Tom Lamar even the more puzzling. Like, why did they spend 70 million euros on a player who was never really a proven goal scorer? Okay, had the really outstanding season
That 16,
at
17,
Monaco,
yeah.
but even that wasn't as a sort of a second striker or as a really advanced winger. Occasionally he was dropping into a midfield three, wasn't he? There was talk of Arsenal potentially signing him as a centre mid at one stage to be the progressive ball carrier. He's not gone out there and ever scored 20 goals in a season. So they've spent 70 million euros on a winger who doesn't specialise in goal scoring. Do they then go and spend... I don't really know where they spend their money now. I think they have to spend it at the back because they've built a whole system on centre-backs and a strong defence. They're still one of the top 5 best defences in Europe. I think they've only conceded 19 goals this season. They're losing 2 of their outstanding centre-backs. Who's going to partner Jimenez?
Felipe Luis might leave as well, so they've.
Felipe Luis might leave. I've heard chat about Saul Niguez being in talks with Manchester City. And
I mean,
Pep
he's on
Guardiola.
an Alan Pardew 8-year contract, isn't he? So
Yeah, it's a bit of a mess at Atleti at the moment, isn't it? Off the field, anyway. On the field, they're getting by, but
Especially as this is the year. I remember, all our predictions at the start of the season was like, well, this could be Atleti's year. And it hasn't materialised in the slightest.
I mean, this would have been the year. Yeah, that was.
Because
The
Barcelona was
Sevilla
slightly
or
in
an Atleti
transition,
could have-
and now Barcelona with their signings this summer, I can see them running away with the league next year, to be quite honest.
especially if they get the league
And,
over the
and
line.
Real Madrid are going to make big moves as well. So Atleti are back where they started, third.
But
guaranteed
losing
title.
players this time, you don't often see them losing players.
But with Atleti, it is more important to retain Diego Simeone, isn't it? And to get people who subscribe to the system. So I guess it is harder for them to shop about. I mean, Tamar Lamar, I haven't watched him week in, week out, but I haven't heard any. Here's a winger who enjoyed, I suppose. Monaco played an attractive attacking brand of football, and that has got to be a tough transition, being I suppose a more defence-minded winger, and it's probably going to take him a little while to adapt. And it might, his attacking numbers might look better when he has Morata work in the channels instead of a kind of a stationary injured Diego Costa. So maybe we are kind of overreacting slightly, but I mean, the success has always been built on that defence. That's the worrying thing.
Yeah.
So any ideas as to who they could bring in?
Well, I mean, I did a little bit of research before this, and I thought that Dortmund's centre-backs were potentially interesting. Obviously, they've got Akanji, they've got Diallo, but I thought Zagadou was probably the most likely of those three to be able to prize away, but he's still only 19. And this is his second first major season of involvement. And yeah, he's looked really good. He's really assured on the ball. He's got great pass accuracy. I think he's got the 4th best in the squad. His passes per game, I think, are the 3rd most in the squad. His tackle and interceptions numbers are quite a drop off from Godin, but then Dortmund play an almost polar opposite style to Atleti, so you can't really compare him on that front. But I just worry about. I was trying to think of, experience that they could bring in. A 26 to 29-year-old who instantly makes an impact at Atleti, and there aren't that many.
Mehdi Benatia would have been nice.
Mehdi Benatia would have been great, or someone like Daniel Regani. I always talk about him, potentially leaving Juventus. He's got a lot of experience on his belt now as well.
My worry is that Daniel Regani is like bang average.
But we just don't see enough of him.
His numbers have never displayed anything otherwise. I mean,
Very highly rated in the national
It's
setup.
nice that top coaches want him. Like Maurizio Sarri was prepared to bid £40 million for him, wasn't he? And Juventus did all they could to hold on to him. So I suppose we should kind of take their opinion on him. But
I wonder
it's
about
difficult.
a player like Jason Denayer at Lyon. I think wouldn't be the worst sort of option for them. Obviously
His stock's
progressing
really
quite
risen,
quickly, and maybe Lyon will be more willing to sell than some of the other clubs we've mentioned, given that they want to keep hold of other assets, particularly their forward line, who are obviously extremely talented, and players like Tanguy Ndombele. So maybe they'd be more willing to part with a player like Jason Denayer than an Ndombele if they can get a sort of 40 to 50 million euro fee for Jason Denayer. So I don't think he'd be the worst option, but it's such a hard market for centre-backs. Everybody wants a centre-back. Man United wants centre-backs. Liverpool probably want another centre-back.
who outside the top 6 in the Premier League has a really, really good centre-half? I mean, Diego Godin, his strength's always been an unbelievable reading of the game, hasn't it? I mean, who could we see leaving from the Premier League to go to Athletic?
We did it on the podcast a couple of weeks ago. I think me and Pat, and you were the director of football, put forward Issa Diop,
Nathan Ake,
Harry
Maguire.
and Fabian Schär is who Pat put forward, who I wasn't quite sure about, but fair enough. And then Tarkowski. I think, were our 4 choices outside the top
man.
6, and I don't see any of them going to Atleti. Maybe Nathan Ake
Making
in
an
a couple of
impression at
years,
Champions
but-
League level, it's just difficult, isn't it?
I wonder, just because Diego Godin is leaving, whether or not Simeone, it's a very different type of, maybe not. I was going to suggest David Luiz going on a free transfer this summer, but then I'm thinking he's not a defensive stalwart, is he? Do you know, he's not the sort of player that Godin is, that's willing to get down and dirty in the mud.
One idea, if you're willing to let him go, Eric Bailly had a great spell at Villarreal before Man United, hasn't really worked out at Man United. Could he be tempted by a move back to Atleti? I don't know whether he's that standard as well.
I can't see Manchester United selling him, to
Really?
be totally honest. I don't really know. Maybe he's been okay for Manchester United, but again, he's very rash. Like, he's not like a disciplined centre-back, which is what I see from every Diego Simeone centre-half. So that makes it really, really troubling where he's going to find someone. I've got horrible images of Godin leaving and then like Jerome Boateng coming in just to fill the gap for a year. Do you know what I mean? That sort of like short-term stopgap while he can reassess his options and look for a longer-term replacement.
I was just thinking Liga NOS then, and I think I kind of ran out of ideas, basically. I mean, Militao's costing Real Madrid 50 million. There's a guy who looks a lot better at centre-back than he perhaps did at right-back. I mean, but even then, 50 million is probably the max that Atleti could shed on a centre-back this summer, isn't it? And even then, the problems are probably slightly more endemic than just one player. So they're going to have to be really savvy.
Yerry Mina, maybe they go, we'll have Yerry Mina if you want Griezmann as part of the thing. Off of Barcelona, still only on loan there, is he? Or did they manage to agree a permanent?
I think he's on loan, yeah.
I like Yerry Mina, but I've not seen anything that would suggest he's ready to take over the mantle of someone like.
No, he's definitely not. He's definitely not. But I think that the options are so short that you may end up getting their hand forced a little bit. And Simeone backing himself to really improve.
I mean, this Lucas Hernandez deal is not a shock. So you'd like to think that behind the scenes at Atleti, they are sort of lining it up, and we've been talking about Diego Godin leaving for about 6 months. So they must have someone in line, but there hasn't really been that many rumblings so far. So slightly concerning times for Atleti, especially if you throw Griezmann's situation into the mix. But yeah, that's our detailed explanation of Atleti's summer and what could go wrong there. But yeah, on to our big match preview. And we were spoiled for choice in terms of games this weekend. There's Roma versus Napoli, Dortmund versus Wolfsburg, and Sevilla versus Valencia. But we decided to preview the game with arguably the most riding on it. It's 3rd versus 6th in Serie A. It's Inter Milan hosting Lazio at 7:30 on Sunday night. Big game for Inter, Chris.
That it is, and they've been slightly dodgy at the start of 2019, so lost 3 of 9. An undulating form has been characteristic of their season, really. I think lost 4 of their opening 19 as well, so didn't begin the season in particularly scintillating form. So achieving a degree of consistency has been somewhat of a struggle for Spalletti this year. But, you know, after that 2-1 loss away to Cagliari, which saw them drop out of the top 3 for the first time since the end of September, they've beaten Spal 2-0 and that massive win over AC Milan 3-2 has seen them go back up to 3rd, so 2 points ahead of a semi-resurgent AC.
Yeah, exciting club.
Piontek, driven AC. So good news for Inter fans ahead of this game. Calcio Mercato have reported that Mauro Icardi, their
He's back.
want-away captain, is back.
Former captain.
Not just back in the matchday squad or contention for a starting place, but back in training. Let's hope he's been keeping himself fit behind the scenes, because apparently hasn't been reporting to first team training for the best part of a month.
Wow.
And Gazzetta dello Sport claimed that Icardi was made to speak to the whole squad at the end of training on Thursday to clarify his position. So there's been a little bit of, I don't know, maybe
to be a fly on the wall in that meeting.
Recompense in that sense between player and club. I mean, let's hope they've swept it all under the rug, because, you know, as combative as he is as a personality, let's say, and that's probably being kind, as difficult as he is to deal with, he's a hell of a player.
Yeah.
And you want him on the pitch for the run-in in what has been a very, very exciting Serie A season. And he could be crucial in this game. You know, his imminent return couldn't have been timed any better, really, with Lautaro Martinez out after serving international duty.
I think it was they played an away game somewhere in South America, and he's taking a long time to get back.
Bit of bloody jet lag or something. Not quite sure there. Now, Inter have been a little bit more suspect on the defensive end than we've probably become accustomed to, particularly from Spalletti side over the last year or so. I think expected goals has them down to concede 29 goals. They've been a little bit fortunate, only conceded 24. So, you know, which is puzzling really, because they've got really good defensive personnel. So I'm sure Spalletti, want to get that right during the run-in. But they have been the third best side in Italy this season, behind Juventus and Napoli. And I was just saying off camera then, Fabian Ruiz, by the way, is having an unbelievable season statistically for Napoli. Go and check out some of his highlights if you haven't already. And Politano, who moved from Sassuolo, is having a decent debut season as well. I think he's their top assister with just 4, but which kind of highlights. I mean, they've been struggling at both ends, I guess, with Perisic getting 10 plus assists last season. Kandreva as well also had a really good purple patch last season.
Rejuvenation there.
So they need a little bit more in the way of creativity. Only Torino and Lazio have scored fewer than Inter's 43 league goals in the top 6 as well, level with AC. So big areas for improvement, which I suppose can be taken as a good and bad thing. That they're obviously presenting themselves is nice, but they have the personnel to do it, and Mauro Icardi coming back will no doubt spike those numbers. What about Lazio, Joseph?
Lazio obviously 6th. Lazio having a pretty much up and down season, but no improvement on last year really, just flatlining continuously. They are obviously 6th, but they're on decent form, whereas Inter Milan have struggled in 2019. Lazio have only lost one of their last 6. They had a massive win against Roma, obviously beating them 3-0, a huge result. They are still 6 points off 4th, where AC Milan obviously sit, but they do have that game in hand. So this is a huge match for Lazio, because last season wasn't great, it was okay. This season, it looks like they're going to finish lower.
It was a disappointing finish to last season, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah. And this season, it arguably looks like they're going to struggle to get to the same amount of points that they got to last season. So I'm sure that'll be pretty disappointing for Inzaghi, because he's also still super reliant on the likes of Ciro Immobile, who's, I believe, got 13 goals, 3 assists. He's approaching 30. They've got a lot of players in the squad that are aging out, for want of a better word. So I think Lazio will be disappointed with this campaign to a level because of a lack of improvement. They'll be worried about a summer transfer window of players aging out. But coming back to this weekend, this is a huge game for them, and their record at the San Siro isn't great. They've won 2 of their last 8 there, I think, and I can only see Inter Milan winning this one on the day. I think the return of Mauro Icardi, if it does happen, will spur them on. I just think Inter Milan are going to roll Lazio over here, despite the fact that Lazio are on better form than Milan.
What do you reckon, Hamill, prediction-wise?
I really like the job that Simone Inzaghi did last campaign, and it's just like with England, it's how do you kind of fit 6 into 4, because there is teams in Italy have really raised their standing, like Atalanta and Lazio, both teams that statistically could have made Champions League football last campaign, but someone has to miss out. AC have looked a little bit better, haven't they?
Is that loss, losing players like Felipe Anderson, if you're Lazio, that's a real hammer blow, because he provides so much creativity.
Yeah, and retaining
most dribbles in the whole of Serie A.
Retain Milinkovic-Savic, but I mean even his numbers have been bang average this campaign. I'm going to go Inter Milan. I think probably 2-1, closely fought. I think defensively Lazio were pretty sound last campaign. Haven't watched a lot of them this year, but.
Yeah. No, I think it will be an Inter win as well, sadly. I think it will be 2-1. I don't think it will be a very high-scoring game, particularly. But yeah, I think Simone Inzaghi will be slightly pleased in that, Milinkovic-Savic last year was the talk of the town. He won't be on the move this summer, I doubt. I think he's only got something like 2 goals and 3 assists. Correct me if I'm wrong. And then Thomas Strakosha in goal. Luckily, not many top teams need a goalkeeper, because he is a really good keeper. But, with Liverpool now having a long-term keeper, all the top 4 basically having solid keepers, maybe Hugo Lloris in a few years, he could move in there. But yeah, I think they'll keep hold of their main asset. And yeah, I can only see an Inter win. So yeah, 2-1, so we're all in agreement.
I'm going to go 1-0 actually. I'm going to go 1-0 Lazio, I think, just to be a bit different.
I like it. And we'll roll straight into the end board. I'm afraid we don't have time for quick-fire questions. this week because we talked about Atletico Madrid for days and days and days. Joe, what should they watch out for in the Football Daily universe?
Come over to Football Daily and watch We Need to Talk. We're talking about footballers and gaming addictions this week.
After Hassan Hutzl's
Yeah, after Ralphie came out. Not a happy bunny.
No.
Yeah, he's taking out the Wi-Fi at Southampton. hasn't he?
Cut it out.
On Euro
They
Football
love him,
Daily, we've got Stat Wars the League and Stat Wars the Champions. I think the last fixture of Stat Wars the Champions round of 16 tomorrow.
No?
No, this week, yesterday.
There's one more to come.
Yes, Kieran.
Kieran
And our mystery guest.
Potentially special, yeah.
Hold on, they go live on Thursdays. So it's next Thursday.
It's next Thursday, it's the last one.
Seamless that.
Yeah.
So next Thursday.
But go and check out Makola and Pat from yesterday.
That's the one.
Absolute clash. And yeah, thanks very much for watching,
Absolute
guys.
clash.
And we'll see you next time. Bye.